Good afternoon, PGA. Welcome to our special PGA conversation with the producers of The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. Featured on our panel today is executive producer and showrunner Jen Flanz, executive producer Jill Katz, and supervising producers Ramin Hedayati, David Kibuuka, and Elise Terrell. For everyone watching today, we welcome and encourage you to submit your questions throughout the session, and you can do so by utilizing the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And our moderator will save the final 5 to 10 minutes or so for audience questions. Speaking of which, I'd like to welcome our moderator today, Rebecca Carroll. Rebecca is a cultural critic at WNYC and host of the podcast Come Through with Rebecca Carroll, 15 Essential Conversations About Race in a Pivotal Year for America. Rebecca is a former critic at large for the Los Angeles Times and a writer whose work has appeared in the New York Times, New York, The Guardian, and The Atlantic, amongst other publications. She's the author of several books, including Surviving the White Gaze, a memoir due out from Simon & Schuster in February 2021. Thanks so much, Rebecca. I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you. And thank you all. It's fun and it's weird, isn't it? It's fun and it's weird. And that I think is a good way to describe 2020, except where is the fun? Is there fun? I wanted to just ask you, because before we started, there was just this lovely kind of ease amongst you all. And so I'm going to start with you, Jen. How long have you as a team worked together? And how has it been to maintain the kind of camaraderie and team feel in quarantine?
Wow. Well, I've been at the show for over 22 years now. So I've worked with everybody on here the longest that any of us have worked together. But I would say, you know, you guys, Elise, you've been here for over 10 now.
Almost 16.
Oh my God. Yeah. It goes by very fast. But you know, and Kibuuka's, I guess of all of us, you're the newest.
Right.
He's going into year 5, or, you know, heading into year 5, right? So yeah, I mean, it's harder to maintain the camaraderie in this world, and I will say that is the thing I miss the most about being in the office and studio, is just hanging out, having just the conversations that we would normally have in the morning that help shape the show. And you know, now it's there's like 6 smaller meetings now on Zoom that are happening. It's hard to stay in touch with everybody and keep up with the pace of making the show. And I would say that has been the biggest challenge.
And I did want to ask too, just logistically speaking, is it just Zoom? A series of Zoom meetings? Are you on the phone?
We cobbled this thing together. I always say we're like homemade. We're on FaceTime, we're on Zoom, we're on Slack, we're on WhatsApp, we're email, we are all over the place. I would say like it's dialer's choice. Setting up the call just does it and springs it on you, and you're like, I'm getting a FaceTime. Okay. I guess this is on FaceTime. I thought it was on Zoom. I was about to check. It's like, it really is. It keeps it interesting. Kibuuka and I have this whole thing at the end of the day where I'm not sure if I'm calling him, which number I'm going to call him on, if I'm going to get him on the laptop or the phone. We do this. It's a guessing. You have to make games in this time to keep it interesting and fun. So yeah.
David, should I call you David or Kibuuka?
Whichever is better for you.
So before everybody knew, or everyone understood or embraced or accepted rather, that things were going to shift to Zoom, to WhatsApp, to distance, what were the conversations like? Did you, when the pandemics hit, were you freaking out about how to make the show? What were the brainstorming creative conversations like? How are we going to do this? How did your creative team rise to this occasion?
Well, for me, I think the thing that was cool was the fact that everyone was going through it in the world. So you couldn't like do anything wrong, if that makes any sense. because everybody is no one is paying attention in that way because they're trying to figure out their own life kind of thing. So I think the conversations were positive in that it gave us an opportunity to make a new thing.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's like that whole thing of positive things can have negatives and negatives can have positive things.
Right.
So we have this massive negative coronavirus, but we have this positive in the sense that we have an opportunity to make a new and fresh thing. So I think that the conversations were pretty positive, like in that sort of space, in terms of brainstorming and looking for new ideas and how you're going to do it and this and this and this. They were quite exciting and positive.
There is something very satisfying, right, about relying on the fact that you are a creative team and that you can address this issue as a creative team, as a challenge, right? At least you're nodding your head. How was the experience for you of like, wow, we have this and we have to find a way through to make a show?
Well, you know, I think the thing is no matter what's going on in the world, our connection with our audience is it's really cathartic for us, and it really allows us to work through whatever's going on in the world. So when we saw, you know, early March that things were shutting down, we were like, okay, well, the most important thing is that everyone stays safe, everyone's home. But then it's how are we gonna make the best version of what we want that we can make with these huge obstacles. And so it was just a matter of each team sort of worked together to figure out, okay, so if we want to tell these stories and still connect with our audience, what are the methods that we're going to use? You know, what's the best way to get Trevor's voice out there and to be able to still maintain the integrity of the show, and but also within this sort of homemade world. And we always joke around that we are a very homemade show as it is. Like everything that happens very last minute, and you know, we do the show 4 days a week, so we are sometimes when you see the way things are going on behind the scenes, it's surprising that we manage to get things done as efficiently as we do, because we just are trying to process so much material so quickly. Right. So we when this arose, we were like, oh, well, you know, we know how to roll with the punches. We can figure this out. And we just sort of all came together and said, all right, what's the best way we can make this work?
And I would say, just to point out, Ramin's team, our digital and social is so robust and like such a big part of the show. And I mean, Ramin, you can speak to it better, but like we're a 24/7 show right now. So the linear version is only part of the show. So we're used to putting out content all the time, which made it a lot easier to start doing the show because we just like ramped up to it. You know, Ramin, you were on the forefront of us getting stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the beginning Trevor, we had a few conversations about how the show might feel, how it should look. I think he made a lot of really good choices in terms of the speed and the cadence, the pace of the editing. You can see is different than the normal show. He's not pausing for laughter. He's not, it's just a different vibe. It's something he had to get used to, but you know, behind the scenes, I think we were also thinking about mimicking certain, you know, people on YouTube and how YouTube creators create content and the pace with which they create content, the pace with which they edit. Right. It's just a different way that you consume when you're watching on digital. And so I think he really got that pretty quickly. And I felt like it was pretty seamless, honestly, like the transition. Like we all communicate over Slack, and that was something we sort of got the whole office on early. My department's always been on Slack, but I think we had to get we got everyone enlisted, which was really helpful, I think, to be able to communicate between departments, to pass, content around, pass videos, things that people are making, ideas. So I think all those two things together kind of merged at the same time and made it work.
There is also the sense that he is grappling in a way that feels specific to this moment, that the new kind of way of presenting the show of you mentioned cadence and, you know, edit and pace and so on and so forth. And there is this sense that he is trying to figure out what's going on as much as everybody else is, in a way that that was not the case with the show, which was much more of a show. But there's this sense of him just like, yo, I'm just trying to get this just like everybody else. Was that intentional, Jill, on certainly on his part, but on your parts as producers of the show?
Does someone else want to take that? Maybe David or Jen? Because I don't want to. Go ahead, Jen.
Sure, yeah, and Kibuuka, you can speak to this. Yeah, I think he is a person going through this with everyone else.
It is
and
not.
The honesty in that is I think appealing to people. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's almost unavoidable, like, because either you shut down or you tell the people that, guys, this is what's currently happening. You know, so I think that it's less it's more that he's willing to be vulnerable, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes.
Oh, okay, this is what we, you know, let's. Yeah.
And I do think you said, you know, it's unavoidable, but I think that other late night shows have avoided. I mean, I think that there are other late night shows who have adapted and are doing a very good job, but have adapted in a different way, which is still much more sort of, this is a show, we're going to keep it a show. And it's just very striking to me that Trevor kind of adapted to this sweatshirt wearing, like in his face, just like trying to figure out. I find it very endearing, and also I think probably one of the things that makes it so appealing and across social too.
Yeah, I think we found that, like, with, you know, he's been doing between the scenes with our audience since he started, you know, a few months into starting, we started this online series Between the Scenes, where he just, I don't want to say it's himself, because he's himself on the show too, but he is less scripted and he's doing it completely off the cuff, and you feel that honesty from him. And he likes, you know, being open with the audience and engaging. He's like a generally inquisitive and engaged person. So I think that I don't think, yeah, like you said, Kibuuka, it's like he's willing to be that person on TV, the same person he is in life. And not everyone is, and that's okay, you know, but if that's what the audience is looking for, like, he's a great vessel for that, you know.
Very genuine, yeah.
You know, I think a lot about how we could not have possibly predicted that social media would become so handy during a pandemic. Ramin, can you speak a little bit to how you've ramped up social and your team, and you know, already the show was very robust, I know, but how that has shifted?
Yeah, I mean, we've always been kind of a 24/7, like Jen said, you know, creating content all times of the day. You know, Trevor likes to say the show is the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, it's all the show. And I think, I mean, how we've ramped up, I think we're just covering, like, we're taking a really sharp look at coronavirus, the response, how the administration is reacting to things, how they're kind of essentially not telling the truth with what, you know, how it's going to die down, things like that. So I feel like we've been, it's been pretty, I mean, yeah, it's, I wouldn't say it's a ramp up. It's just like a continuation of what we've usually done.
And Elise, in terms of guests and thinking about that, how we're thinking about, and maybe you're not the right person for this, but I'm just trying to get to it.
I'd toss that one to Jen. Jen.
Okay.
In terms of guests, the whole thing, but how has the process of choosing guests changed? Yes and no. I would say the process of choosing guests changed like 2 to 3 years ago, in a way that, you know, we have these two like amazing producers that both book and produce the whole segment, which I think is unique to our show. It's not how every late night show does it. And they really understand Trevor and what he's interested in. And when you are booking guests and keep that in mind, I think you get really great conversations. And we started trying to, also in the beginning, it changed over from John to Trevor. It was harder to book guests. And we decided, let's just have conversations with interesting people that Trevor's interested in. And so we started having all these young authors and athletes and activists. And so once we got into this time, it was already working for us. Instead of just booking celebrities and whoever's on a press tour, we really had a plethora of great interviews out there with real content that people were engaging with, that we re-released online, obviously, and sent out on social in Corona. But we because of that, Dr. Fauci wanted to come to the show, and I think that was a big move. That was very big for us. He sought us out because of our young and inclusive audience, and I think once we had that, he wanted to talk to Trevor, and it was about our audience, but it was also about Trevor being a great interviewer and being somebody was on the forefront of trying to get the truth out about, being safe and listening to the experts. And, there's being a lot of misinformation in the world and trying to suss through that. And so once we got Dr. Fauci, I think that was a big get for us. And then we got Governor Cuomo, and there were a lot of big gets, which we're so lucky. Our talent team is great, and they've been working on this stuff really hard. But we also had a panel of activists right when the resurgence of Black Lives Matter protests was starting, and we had Amanda Nguyen, who is the founder of Rise, an organization that helps women who've been assaulted. So these are conversations that we have on the show when we were in the studio, but people are engaged and listening. And so I think it's appealing for guests to come on because, it's a platform where we're not just joking around, but we're not the news. We're kind of an in-between nice place where people can kind of be themselves and, but also get real information out there.
And so whose idea was Bubba? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. A great thing about another positive is that the guests don't physically have to be in New York City.
Also great.
Right.
Whereas before it was even if they wanted to come logistically, it was just, difficult. So
Right.
that will help.
Yeah.
And so whose idea was Bubba Wallace, and why was that an important get?
We actually were looking at Bubba before the story about the news broke. We had been looking at him as soon as NASCAR was banning the flag, the Confederate flag. So, so we were already on that story. Him being the only Black NASCAR driver, he's such a strong voice in that different world, and we thought it would be an interesting conversation. So we were kind of looking into it anyway. Then the story broke, and it was well, let's get him, go after him, and we had, I don't know if everybody knows this, he was booked on a whatever it was, a Tuesday or Wednesday, and about 2 seconds before we were Skyping with him, they had to pull him from the show because the statement from NASCAR was the FBI was coming out.
FBI.
But he couldn't talk about it. So it would have aired that night, but it would have been taped before the statement. And they were like, he can't talk right now, and we're on such a tight time constraint with getting the show out that it was ooh, okay, he'll come back tomorrow. Great, fine, we'll do it tomorrow. And we were on the edge of our seat, what's the statement gonna say? Because we knew it was coming out. But I think it was a great conversation. And he's really an interesting person in a really different world, and he's speaking out, and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
The producers who book the guests, I will say, because I'm not involved in that at all, are very on the pulse. Sometimes I'll be guys, are you making this happen, or
John, one of have a joke with Beth, John, and myself where it's just like we planned it, because things happen to fall into place all the time.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing, but we're always like, oh, it's just like we planned it, but it really is never like we planned.
So on that note, what has been the most challenging? The things that, that have been really difficult to figure out?
Jill, you want to, this is.
Sure. Well, the logistics of all of it. We're all at home. We rely on internet speeds in each person's home. We rely on technology so much, and computers are computers. Yeah. So just getting to the point where we can assemble the show and get it out to the world on the same day. We face challenges almost every day, but we really like the way that we're doing it. We like the look of the show. Ramin referred to that sort of YouTube kind of feel, and we're sticking with it. So we've said homemade. We feel very homemade every day, but we get it together. But the challenges are there, and a lot of it comes with the technology and just not being in the same place. Right. How often you pop into someone's office and have something, right. You solve it right then, And
right.
So,
so what are the logistics like on a daily basis? Walk me through from start to finish.
Do you want to take it? Correct me when I go wrong, because I'm not there every step of every way.
I'm just like, there's like six different things happening all at the same time.
Right. We've got writers meetings in the morning. We're shooting Trevor's got two cameras in his home, and that happens. And then those files have to go out to 7 different editors.
Wow.
And by the end of the day, we've got one guy in Brooklyn piecing this all together, assembling the show. And this takes so many people to get that there. And then he actually physically runs a tape out to a truck, and then it goes out to the world.
No, sir.
Yeah.
Is that really true?
That is
so broadcast news.
There's a guy in Bay Ridge.
There's a guy.
So broadcast news. There are so many nights when he is physically running. And I'm like, don't forget your mask. He really puts gloves and a mask on and runs down with the drive and gives it to a guy in a truck with gloves and a mask on, and they have Clorox wipes, and but it is broadcast. It's broadcast news. It really is.
That is so fantastic, though, and exhilarating and exciting, and
there's a lot of nights it's been exhilarating.
It's like those reporters that come out of the Supreme Court with the decision.
Yeah. Totally.
And what has surprised you about the conversations that Trevor has been having that have perhaps taken a turn that you didn't anticipate?
You mean on the show?
I'm guessing, as a host and interviewer myself, there's prep, and then there's questions, and then, Trevor can use what he wants and go in a different direction. But so having worked with him in the best of scenarios, and now in this sort of makeshift scenario, how has he improv more than before? Have there been sort of revelations that you didn't anticipate?
I don't want to dominate this whole conversation, but yeah, we usually tape in front of a live studio audience. And we do it a really different way. We rehearse, then we rewrite, and then we do it in front of an audience, so Trevor tapes it right through. And in this time, we do we get a script together, and he does read, but even in the studio, he's so intimately involved with the script that he ad-libs a bit. But, now he'll ad-lib and change and go on a joke run for, it's Kibuuka, you could speak to it better.
The interesting one here is that we have a team in the morning with the Jen and the writing team, so to speak. And because we don't have an audience anymore, we don't have a rehearsal. We have to understand our innate sense of what is funny and what is interesting and what is appealing, because we don't have an audience to tell us that was good, that was not good, so that creates opportunities where you're this is good. Sometimes you'll do a thing where the audience in the studio will not find it good, but the people at home would find it good.
Right.
And other way around, you know, because sometimes studio audiences are very sitcom-y. They want, you know, they've just come from the Statue of Liberty, and now,
Right.
you know, New York, I'm watching a taping of The Daily Show.
Right.
And they want a specific joke that you've done 15 times, but for them, they've never seen it, so they want it, you know, live. But we don't have that anymore. So now you have an opportunity to be more creative, where we sit around and then we go, do you find it funny? I find it funny. Because there's no one to tell us. So no one. So
We just,
That's so wild.
we laugh at it when we're talking about it, or when Trevor, you know, does it, we're watching him on FaceTime. So sometimes we're like, oh, that was actually funny.
So, and at the end of the editing process, like, we'll be there and Jen will ask questions like, is this funny or not funny? And then go into and be like, guys, it's funny. You know, like that kind of thing didn't happen because we always had the studio audience telling us. They had a bigger role to play in the studio audience, I mean, specifically, had a bigger role to play in what we were doing. Whereas now it seems like the world audience has a role to play because you get more feedback online, and that kind of thing is a lot more, not important is the wrong word, but is a lot more present now.
And I think the kinds of jokes are different too, right? I mean, he's doing a lot of jokes to other cameras that are quick cutaways. You know, sometimes there's just a joke is just a tight edit. And so we're kind of finding ways to, I think, have him deliver jokes in a way that we didn't before, and that you just can't with a studio audience necessarily.
David, you had said that it's not more important but more present. Would you say that it's maybe more nuanced?
Yeah, it's more nuanced, and you can really be in touch with yourself. You know, I may be right or wrong on this, but with Stevie Wonder and Songs in the Key of Life, he apparently he was in a studio, made it by himself kind of thing, and was not taking feedback from like record label heads and this, because he wanted to make a specific artistic piece. Bruce Springsteen, The River, you know, that kind of thing. And so now Trevor's trying to do a more Trevor thing, you know, like to really get in touch with himself, because he knows that if he gets in touch with himself, he will resonate with the rest of the world, if that makes any sense.
Oh,
and
completely.
Yeah, and so that has been very refreshing for all of us, because you know, you are watching this, we're like live, we're in front of, we spend every morning seeing what is going to get out and how it's going to impact the world. For instance, what was Wendy's? The Wendy's story.
The guy
After Richard.
Yeah.
That thing was done where he was like, I don't know what, he had a few ideas and it was happening, you know, like they were mulling around in his head. Then he said, let me just check the camera. And then he did it like we witnessed some sort of soul event happening, because it just came out of him. And so that kind of stuff doesn't really happen when you have a studio audience who have come from Times Square, in a cab. They went to the steps and saw Sex and the City where it was shot. You know, like, yes.
But that's a very real distinction and a very real reality in terms of who comes to see the late night or a late night show, a live audience. And so do you think when God willing, we all get back into a real world scenario or situation, that there'll be a sort of melding of the two ways you produced?
Yeah.
Because you also have confidence in knowing that the thing that you say like resonates with a wider audience, and the studio audience themselves will be like, oh, okay, this is funny now, because they also will have watched at home and will be more open to things.
It's like an equalizer.
Yeah.
Right?
It is.
Coronavirus. The great equalizer.
The great equalizer.
You can use that. Tell Trevor you can use that.
I'm going to show up on the show in 2 weeks. But yeah, I think we'll take it back with us, and I agree. I think the audience, this was like a time for us to like pilot ideas and ways to do the show, and the audience at home is like forgiving because they don't know what to expect us to do because it's not the regular show. And so we've been able to see what's successful. And I think, why would you throw away success? And especially if people are going to be looking for that, it's, you know, the things that are doing well, we want to bring back to our studio.
And will he ever wear a suit again? We don't know.
We don't know.
People love the hoodies. They love them.
Might just be 400 hoodie rotation.
I've never seen anyone tweet about his suit, ever.
Yeah.
What?
Whose idea was the hoodie, and how many does he have?
Honestly, it's a kind of a dumb story, but Kibuuka and I were both on the phone, and he said, "Kibuuka, what should I wear?" And I said, "I can't believe you're asking Kibuuka what you should wear. What about me?" And then I said, "Yeah, I mean, he's very stylish, but so am I." And I said, "What about hoodies? You have great hoodies. Like, just wear your hoodies." And then he did. And then it became a thing.
And then he got a lot of hoodies.
And is there, and I'm sorry if I don't know this, I've taken a lot of content, but was there ever a segment where he talked about the resonance of a hoodie for a Black man?
No, we did not. It was, sorry, Kibuuka, what were you going to say?
No, say, continue.
Oh, just we have not done that as part of his attire.
The first thing I thought.
And the beautiful thing about what you are saying right now is that it shows the genuine nature of it. That not that, you know, like, it's like, for instance, a 50-year-old Black guy is going to wear a velvet suit sometimes. So, so it shows that Trevor is a Black man, you know, if that makes any sense. So the hoodie, he had a hoodie, he's wearing it. It's not always, you don't have to prove you're Black when you're Black.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think it's super interesting that you bring that up, because I do often think about the way in which Trevor navigates Black America as a Black South African, and the expectation and the, you know, the optics of him, and how that does or does not make its way into the show when he's having conversations with folks about race. Do you find that I mean, does he talk about that? Do you find that writers talk with him about that? Where, you know, David, I love what you're saying, but I do think that there is a difference between being a Black man, American man, and a Black South African man in America, if that makes sense. Is that something that, yeah.
But in terms of cultural imperialism, America did very well in terms of, we grew up with American things, if that makes any sense. The American experience was very, you spread it well to Africa kind of thing, you know? So when we came here, there was a melding. I like that word, a melding, where we're like, oh, you know, like sometimes African Americans go to America, go to Africa and then kiss the ground and then we're home, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, the comedy trope of it. For African coming to America, excuse the pun, there was also, oh, we're home, if that makes any sense. Because we grew up listening to hip hop, we grew up listening to soul music. There's a lot of things that are part of us that were given to us by Black Americans, if that makes, so.
It makes tons of sense. I want to see that segment. That is so interesting that there is this sense of a Black South African coming to America.
I was just going to say, I know the sketch we're making when we get back, Coming to America 3.
Okay, I'm looking forward.
Let's do
it.
I remember Jay-Z came to perform in South Africa, and he was like doing his show, and he stopped the show and basically was like, guys, how do you know all my lyrics? And we're like, guys, we grew up on this stuff, you know, that kind of, you know? So it's like kind of, we've had the experience. We're an outpost to some extent.
I love that. We have about 10 minutes left and we've got 2 questions. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask those. This is, should I say the name? I suppose I will. From Melissa. Do you have someone on staff that their job is to watch Fox News every day? And do you pay that person extra for the pain and suffering?
Well,
I mean, you know, I've been there since 2007, and we obviously have covered a lot of Fox News in that time. We still do. I mean, we still kind of all watch from time to time, but you know, on Twitter, you can kind of see what's happening and what sound bites are floating to the top, what people are talking about. You know, you have people at Media Matters, for example, they do great work, and they actually have people dedicated to watching Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity. And so, you know, we can watch their feeds and see the sound bites that they're kind of putting out that they think are important or crazy or whatever. And so it's a way to kind of keep tabs on what's going on. And then if we have a specific piece, like for example, we made this kind of mega montage called Heroes of the Pandemic, where we strung together all these bites of Fox News and the Trump administration downplaying coronavirus in February and March. And so for like targeted pieces like that, we then will go and search through transcripts, search through Snapstream is this program we use to look at video clips. So it's a mixture of seeing what's on Twitter, see what people are talking about, see what the conversation's about, and then kind of getting a sense of our own ideas and then going back into transcripts and searching for what we need based on ideas we have.
And we do have a department that is kind of dedicated to watching.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they watch.
Came from that department and then went into digital. But yeah, I mean, there was a time in 2007 when you guys were watching all day, every day.
We actually did. Like
we did do that.
To our desks and watched it really.
Yeah.
And so what then is the process of writing a joke around these things? Like, like, you know, you watch something like the president downplaying the coronavirus. Like, how do you get to the funny place there?
I mean, sometimes the funny is in the absurdity and the hypocrisy of just, you know, it's a lot of this isn't funny. But it's sometimes the way it's packaged. You know, I think the way we packaged that Heroes of the Pandemic thing was we packaged it as patriotic, and we you know, adorned it with American flags and patriotic music, and we called them heroes. So like that's the joke. You know, the things they're saying are not inherently funny, but we sort of put a little bit of a joke box around it.
And I think that's part of like how we find jokes, and all of it is that it's, I mean, everybody there is funny and fun to work with. And I think it's the way, maybe it's a certain type of person, but it's kind of the way we all handle it is to find the funny.
It's our coping mechanism.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really miss the most about doing the show remotely is, you know, we usually start the day with being in a room, watching clips and just riffing on what we see. So now that's really been, you know, reduced to Slack and email. So it's not so much face to face, because we have, like you said in the beginning, a very established rapport as a staff, and we know each other's jokes, and we know, you know, who's off color when certain things happen. And but everyone sort of has a different sensibility about what's happening in the world that has been established from years of working together. So even though we're not in the room together, that still comes through a lot. The jokes come through in, you know, via Slack, via email, in the small Zoom meetings. That's one of the things that I don't want to speak for all my colleagues, but I miss the most about being in the room with everyone, listening to what jokes come up, because people build on each other so organically. And it's just, it's been amazing. You know, when Kibuuka was talking about Trevor sort of being more grappling with what's funny and what's not on his own, it used to be that we were all in a room together and it was very clear what was funny and what wasn't, because we could talk it out and say that's not funny or that's offensive or whatever. So now it's been sort of stripped down, and that's been a really interesting part of the process of becoming this you know, remote show.
I know, whatever we are.
Yeah.
And I imagine too, I mean, because it's, you know, the humor and the getting to the humor place is really baked into the DNA of the show, and in your lives and in your rapport and camaraderie, that there's also a measure of thick-skinnedness, right? Which is like, that's probably a big part, because if people are gonna, if you're really going to say that's funny or that's not funny, you've got to be brutally honest, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we are brutally honest to each other. That is something that I like love about being at the show, is like nobody is sugarcoating it for you, because they're not going to be like, oh no, that's good, because it makes air, you know, you can't. Yeah. No. So you do have to have thick skin to keep pitching jokes and ideas, and even your thoughts on how to do things. Like it becomes that everyone has an opinion on everything, honestly, in a great way. Like it's from top to bottom, like everybody weighs in. You know, if the room's laughing, then it's funny, you know. Sometimes it's funny and you can't do it on the show. Or it's funny and we're like, that's funny, but it's not funny if Trevor says it, but it might be funny if Dulce says it. You know, like there's I mean, we're so lucky to have a stable of correspondents that we did not cast for inclusivity, but just happened to end up that way, which is amazing. We just like picked the funniest people, and then we're like, oh my God, we have like all these voices represented.
Yeah,
and
it's not that hard, is it? It's not that hard. It's not that hard, is it?
It isn't that hard, which is insane. I mean, we really just found really funny people, and they happen to all have different points of view. But it's a great thing to have as part of the show, because Trevor, it's a good back and forth a lot of times. To see Trevor with one of them, or them out in the field, they are passionate about a certain topic. You know, we really lean into what the correspondents want to do in the field and in their chats, and what they want to say, in the same way we want Trevor to say what he wants to say, you know. So that's but that does happen in the morning a lot, when we're like, that's funny, but maybe that's a Ronnie chat, you know.
Yeah. So I'm going to end with the second question that's not really a question, but it's a nice thing. Mitch says, I can only stomach the news when I hear it from Trevor. Please stop going on vacation or hiatus. We need Trevor on every day. It's too important. Not really a question.
That's very
Thanks,
nice.
Mitch.
We would not be able to do it. We would never be able to do a PGA Zoom panel in the middle of a show day. So thank you.
I was going to say, do you get fully dressed every day?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I do.
I'm not fully dressed now.
Every day. Because I'm afraid I'm going to stop forgetting how to do it.
Oh my God, but you look the best. You look better than anybody else on the panel. I'm sorry, but you do.
True. No, that's absolutely true.
Thank you. I take that as a compliment. I dress up for myself. I mean, at work, even people are, you know, people go, where are you going later? I'm like, home. I just like clothes and makeup. I'm very, I was afraid I'd forget how to do it if I stopped doing it. I wear sweats sometimes, but the hair and makeup every day.
You guys are a joy. I wish I worked on your team.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.
So this was great.
It's really fun. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.